Welcome to the Art for Wellbeing project. This is our third session, and this session is titled Illuminating the Everyday. So in it we'll be taking a closer look at the things around us and finding inspiration in the everyday, things that may seem mundane on the surface, through art can be elevated to a level of beauty. So the still life in art has been tackled as a subject for centuries. However, there are few innovators within this medium and within this theme. One is Paul Cézanne. Paul Cézanne took the still life to another level. Before, they were very photographic or realistic. And Paul Cézanne started to break up the scene with stronger lines, stronger colours and forms. This evolved into Cubism. And here's Juan Gris, really breaking that form up again. This is a still life of a guitar. It's becoming more and more abstract. And this is Vanessa Bell. Vanessa Bell was Virginia Woolf's sister, part of a Bloomsbury group. Here we see that her still life, which is some items and flowers on a shelf, it's really verging towards a very expressive and abstract way of depicting a still life. Our featured artist this week is a contemporary painter called Sarah Spackman. Sarah paints mainly still lifes of flowers, of fruits, of various objects around her. And she really takes a lot of time focusing on the form and on the colours. Here's Sarah at work here. So I read something where she said that she can spend all morning or even all day trying to mix the perfect colour for a fruit or for a vegetable. She really pays attention to these unique details of the paintings. And whilst her painting isn't realistic, it's still very much inspired by those things in her everyday life. Here's a beautiful painting by her, very loose. It's loose in the sense of the brush marks, of the marks she's making. These pears seem to glow with the light. They really stand out from that violet grey background. She's using here complementary colours of yellow and violet, and the pears just really come to life. Again, she's using complementary colours here of blue and orange, and there seems to be much more texture in this painting. The blue, especially in the shadows, as you can see, is very different to the blue in light. How she structures the oranges is by a series of differently directioned brush strokes and palette knife marks. Again, it's a very loose painting, but it's rendered beautifully. We've done this in the first couple of presentations where we looked at different artists and the things that are important to them. So for Sarah Spackman, things like still life and fruit, observation, objects, form, nature, they're all part of her practice, part of her creative identity. Here's another still life by her of a flower, painted again in a loose way. You can see that the edges that she's using aren't complete clean-cut edges. She lets some of the paint and the colour from each side blend into another. Our exercise this week is to paint a still life. I'm going to put an image up on the screen in a minute, but we want to look at how we can capture those essential things of objects. Colour isn't really important. That can come in later. The key is to understand a little bit about dark and light and how those help create three-dimensional objects in a space. So for this exercise, out of the set that people were sent, we're to choose 2 colours. If you're doing this at home, choose 2 similar colours, so you could have ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, or cyan blue, phthalo blue, and burnt umber like we have here. You want some kitchen roll plus some water and brushes. Here's an interpretation I'd done of the photograph using burnt umber and cyan blue. It's quite intriguing the range you can get between those 2 colours. So on the one hand, it's very bright blue, which you don't see in the photograph or in the painting. What you do see in the background pair is some of that burnt umber coming through. All of the shadows are created by mixing burnt umber and cyan blue together to create those shadows, to create those subtle greys and washes. I'm using gouache in a watercolour way here, so the brightest white is the white of the paper. So focus on value, i.e. dark and light, rather than colour. This is why any painting, even the most bright and colourful paintings, if all of the colour is taken out and you just see it as a black and white, you could still see the image, you can understand what it is, because colour really is an addition. The foundations of a painting are on the dark and value aspects of it. So here's an example where the burnt umber and cyan mixed together, you can see in the middle there, make a black colour. So on the one end you have bright blue, on the other hand you have the burnt umber, the pure burnt umber, and then in the middle the 2 together make a black. This is great for shadows. So our exercise is using those colours to create a version of this scene here, of these 2 pairs. Again, focus on the form, the shadows, rather than the details and the colours. As we move on with this, and we've practiced that part of the exercise, we're going to open up our colour box now. During the Zoom group, many people found that quite challenging and frustrating to use those 2 colours. Even though it was challenging, it gave us the foundations of how to create a painting, and you only had those 2 colours available. You could mix them together to create a painting nonetheless. So for the final exercise, what we're going to do is going to paint an interpretation of one of the following images, or choose something from around us, fruit, an ornament, flowers, etc., and do an interpretation on that. You can use all of the colours available and just have a play, just experiment. Don't feel restricted by the exercise we've just done. So here are the images. You have a pear and you have some flowers in a vase. Use all the colours available and see what you come up with.